Many Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I am Kat, she, her, and I am excited because maybe next time our audio will be better, but it'll probably be worse at first.
I'm Taryn, and that doesn't really apply to me.
Yeah.
I'm just here.
You're providing moral and, emotional support.
Usually.
And wrangling dogs. So many dogs.
This is the beginning of every episode, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times, if I can, I cut it out.
Yeah. Let's see that.
Sometimes it's inevitable. So we fully support content warnings and taking care of your own mental health. And this book really needs them. Here are the content warnings for this book and thus this episode. Rape, car accident, murder, animal cruelty, animal death, medical content, death, sexual violence, suicide, medical trauma, gun violence, grief, injury detail, death of a parent, sexual assault, child death, child abuse, terminal illness, blood, mental illness, fire, religious bigotry, pedophilia, chronic illness, misogyny, physical abuse, schizophrenia, psychosis, toxic relationship, racism, infidelity, racial slurs, bullying, alcohol, sexual harassment, stalking, sexual content, confinement, body horror, sexism, domestic abuse, war, homophobia, dementia, mass/school shootings, emotional abuse. That is it! I think that was 3 breaths. 3 breaths worth of content warnings for the Dead Zone.
I'm not reading this one.
Because there's 3 breaths worth of content warnings for the Dead Zone.
Yeah.
So we read the Dead Zone. I read the Dead Zone.
Some of you may have read the Dead Zone.
We read from the prologue up through chapter 9, through the end of chapter 9. We stopped before we got into chapter 10. Let me tell you about the Dead Zone. The Dead Zone was originally released in August of 1979. No cute story on the website about how this one came to him, but if you've started it, you can probably tell it's a lot more inspired by the trash heap of a world we live in. And lived in then. Yay!
There's something comforting to know that it has kind of always been this way.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And I know, Michio Kaku talks about, there's a cycle that just occurs, every 80 years. Basically, the same things happen over and over again, where you have, this surge and then some kind of depression. Then, you just keep cycling through this roughly every 80 years. I do think we're going through it faster now, though.
The internet has made it, has made everything just cycle so much faster.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting because, the Chinese, dynastic cycle, same thing, where you have, basically your rulers in place, the peasants eventually uprise, set a new ruler in place, and then they do it all over again. It's just what happens.
80 years kind of makes sense, though, because that's a human lifespan, so I feel like that's about a generation as well, don't you think?
I hadn't thought about it that way, but no, that makes sense.
Because humans are very stupid.
Humans are so fucking stupid, and we're creatures of habit.
Yeah, so we just keep doing the same things because...
we never learn.
No.
We never learn. So, yeah, no, that's a valid point. The book starts out with a young John Smith who is ice skating and ultimately suffers a head injury. The second half of the prologue introduces our eventual political baddie. King leaves zero room for you to reason that this man isn't a monster, since our introduction to him is him selling Bibles and graphically killing a dog. Fuck that guy.
He kills the dog while out, selling Bibles?
Yes, he's a door-to-door Bible salesman. In 1955.
Okay.
And I think it's 1955. It's something like that. And there's a dog on the property that he's coming to sell to. It's a farmhouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the dog's doing the dog's job. There's a stranger on his property. And he doesn't like that, so he kills the dog. He's also just a horrible fucking person, because he very much is relishing in this. And I think that's the point, is to show you he is not a good dude. There is no argument that Stilson is a redeemable or relatable, complex bad guy. He's just a bad guy. I don't think you're meant to have any sympathy for him.
All right.
no matter what. Like, because, like, obviously, we've talked about Annie.
Yeah.
There is a level of sympathy for Annie because she's so mentally unwell. And I do imagine Stilson is mentally unwell if he comfortably kills dogs. But at the same time, there's still just this barrier of, like, he knows it's not an okay thing to do and he did it anyway.
Yeah.
And, like, he even talks about it and reflects on, like, yeah, my boss would be mad because, you know, the idiots that live here that I'm trying to sell the Bible to aren't going to be happy when they come home if they find me with their dead dog.
Jeez.
So it's very much more probably in the realm of, like, psychopathic behavior, I guess. I don't know enough about the psychology behind that, but I assume that's probably what King was trying to imply. Or, like, what is it? American Psycho, where the guy, like, doesn't feel things normal or something. Never watched that movie. I've only heard about it.
I haven't ever watched that movie either.
But you love Christian Bale.
I know. I know I do.
Apparently, we have to watch this movie.
I think, like, it just has such a bad...
Yeah.
It's...
Well, that is something to add to our to-be-watched list, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Anywho, so out of the prologue, we pick up in October of 1970 with Sarah, who lives on Flag Street with 2 G's. I'm going to repeat that. Sarah lives on Flag Street. The Stand had been released the year before in October of 1978. So, you know, I see you, Mr. King. We all see you. Anyways, so Sarah is getting ready for her date with John Smith, who goes by Johnny. They're going to a carnival and will be taking her car. They go, have fun, eat hot dogs. Then Johnny comes across the Wheel of Fortune, which is just roulette. He bets. Sarah gradually gets sick, presumably due to bad carnival hot dog. Johnny goes to take her home, but wants to place one last bet. And can you guess what he bet on? You can guess what he bet on. He bet on 19.
Of course he bet on 19.
Yeah. He bet on 19. He wins $500 from the bet, then takes Sarah home and tells her to rest, and he calls a cab to take him back to his place. And it was a shame because this was the night they were finally gonna bone. Like, Sarah had decided this, and she had already kind of told him, like, hey, I'm willing to do that. But, you know, as Gail says in Baldur's Gate, when you turn him down, it's a shame when we let moments pass us by. Because at least up through chapter 9, Sarah ain't gonna get a chance at that D.
That head-wounded D.
She might get a shot later, you know, because one of the content warnings was infidelity. So, you never know what's gonna happen in the rest of the book.
Has she experienced enough life hardship to be beautiful?
I mean, it does sound like her previous boyfriend ahead of Johnny was not awesome. So maybe. And she's a teacher.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But why, you might ask, does she not get that D? That's because the cab that Johnny takes on his way home, as they're driving, there's some kids street racing, and they head-on collide with a Mustang. The cabbie dies, the kid driving, the other car dies, and eventually I think the passenger in the other car also dies, so Johnny's like the only one who survives this. But he is in a coma for the next 4.5 years.
Wow.
Can we call that living? No.
I don't know. I think I could use a coma for the next 4-ish years.
I'm not gonna lie, like, he's talking about, like... because he goes out with Nixon, and when he comes back, it's after Watergate. And so, to be in you know what, though? Under this administration, they'd have chucked us out. His parents get called, and holy fuck, I fucking hate his mother. I will admit, I was impressed that Stephen King did not have Herb, Johnny's father, being an abusive dick. The character does think about hitting her at one point, but he never actually does. At least not through chapter 9 and what is seen. It's possible maybe there's some shit that isn't getting expressed, But the fact that he goes out of the way to say that Herb thought about hitting her with his cane, I kind of get the vibe that the implication is that he is not striking this woman, unlike many other king fathers.
Points for her.
Points for Herb. You know, the Dead Zone does have its crazy religious woman, and it's Johnny's mother, Vera. And at one point in the book, Sarah actually reflects on how Johnny describes his mom's religious nature. And it's put as she's somewhere between holy roller and snake handling. And damn if that ain't apt for what gets described about this fucking woman. This woman wails, she screams, and she prays aggressively. And when asked to even so much as like, turn it down a little, she gets angry and tells like her husband not to tell her what to do. She's just praying, blah, blah, blah. And she acts as though him telling her to reel it in is the same as striking her. It's even described that she is basically buying into any stupid ass scam. Like she is buying Jim Baker's COVID cures. That's how fucking stupid this woman is.
It took me a minute to remember that Jim Baker is still alive. Is he? I think he is still alive.
He is still alive.
But that he certainly was during COVID and was peddling COVID cures.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel fair. I mean, I do not wish death on Jim Baker, but
I mean, we don't get Tammy Faye no more.
That's what I was gonna say. Tammy Faye has passed away.
Yeah. I mean, between the two, I'd much rather have Tammy Faye.
I think most people would.
Yeah.
I think even people who like Jim Baker would rather have Tammy Faye.
So yeah, that is the kind of person Vera is, and it only gets worse by her son being in a coma for 4.5 years. We will talk more on that in a moment. I have so many rants about that. So Johnny's parents get the news. They go to the hospital. Sarah finds out the next day. She also goes to the hospital, ends up meeting his parents, goes in, sees him. Eventually they all kind of depart because the doctors are telling them Johnny is not expected to wake up. Sarah moves on with her life. She marries a lawyer, has a kid. Herb breaks his leg at some point, but he keeps going on. On a couple of occasions in the book, he expresses that he kind of wishes his kid would just die and put all of them out of this misery, because obviously his wife is getting worse with the various things that she is believing. They are financially struggling because, one, she's buying a bunch of nonsense, and they have to now support a person in the hospital in a coma. You can't take a person home from that. There's just this holding on to hope that is a little bit of a prison, which, you know, really is, like, throws us back to the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Where hope is a little bit of a prison of its own, where you just keep hanging in there, because it's going to be different someday, right? But is it ever different? Vera is getting significantly worse, and she refuses to take medication. We also get a peek during this time while Johnny is in his coma at the Castle Rock Strangler, the thing that led us to read The Dead Zone, as he was mentioned in It by Beverly when referencing the nationwide news stories alongside the Atlanta child murders. This chapter was interesting as the identity of the killer is concealed by only referring to them as the killer throughout the whole chapter. No name is ever provided. What is provided is at least some understanding of where the killer's, like, fucked up brain came from. That being, of course, their mother. The killer recalls their mother having walked into their room without knocking, and they were playing with their thing. That's how it is in the book. And either way, she got pissed, called him a nasty fucker, and put a clothespin on it.
Oh, no.
Yep. Not an excuse to do murder, but we have an explanation for why he's a murderer. Because now he's on a mission to kill all the nasty fuckers out in the world. There's also another brief shot of Stilson, who is chatting with a Nazi about potentially doing some work for him. And then we get back to everybody else. Johnny does eventually wake up on May 17th of 1975. The first nurse he interacts with, when she touches him, he gets a flash of her son, who is going to be having eye surgery. He basically tells her it's going to be a success without any knowledge of that. And so it kind of freaks her out. Either way, she goes and gets doctors, because there's a couple neurologists who have taken an interest in Johnny since he's been in a coma. Things proceed with getting him back up and running. His parents are once again called to be told, hey, he woke up. A moment which Vera totally ruins. They go to see him. Vera is unpleasant. Johnny does seem to know how to distract her enough from her stuff to break it up and throw her off just in, like, brief spurts. She always cycles back around, but she can be distracted for a moment. The neurologists who have taken an interest in Johnny talk to him. One of them, when they had touched him, Johnny had insisted on seeing the photo in his wallet. The man provides it, and Johnny rambles off info about the man's mother, who he believed had died during the Holocaust. She had actually gotten amnesia and was out in California. The other doctor does not like it, and it makes him angry. The man who might have a living mother out there is, like, not so upset by it. He's like, okay. And he does follow up. He ends up finding a woman by the name that Johnny provided. He calls her. When she answers the phone, though, he does not speak. He just hangs up. He was satisfied just hearing her voice and knowing, like, okay, that was my mom. So he does tell Johnny, though, like, all of this information, and, like, maybe don't tell people that you can, like, just know things with your second sight, as it is called in this book. They had also gone over some questions when Johnny had woken up to see what he knew and remembered, basically assess for brain damage. And there were some words that he couldn't remember the word for picnic table. And so they designated things that are kind of in that spot where he's, like, able to picture it, but he can't verbalize it, as the dead zone. They do perform surgery to try and restore Johnny's ability to walk. Does seem like it's a success. At least through chapter 9, he's able to start bending his knees. They assume that he's going to walk. I have to assume it's going to happen as well, because I'm pretty positive I've seen, like, clips of Christopher Walken in this movie walking around. Sarah comes by to see him. It's awkward. For some reason, despite saying she couldn't wait and she loves her husband and her 7-month-old son, whose name is Dennis. He is named after his grandfather. When she goes to leave, she kisses Johnny on the mouth, gets a flash, and tells her where to find her thought-to-be-lost wedding ring. Right? Like, Johnny was even a little surprised that she, like, mouthed him. So
I was more... I mean, that's a whole thing as well, but the lost wedding ring, like, why was she taking it off?
So she had lost it on their honeymoon, on her and her husband's honeymoon, her original one. It was too big, and so she was afraid she was going to lose it, so she had taken it off and put it in her suitcase pocket. Then they thought that they had lost it, and before they came back from Montreal, which is where they went on their honeymoon.
Oh, God. Why? Maybe, you know what? Maybe that actually is a normal honeymoon place.
Maybe on the East Coast it is. Is Montreal on that side?
That would make sense. I don't know. I have no idea where...
Okay.
It's not above us.
Okay. Then maybe it's probably closer over there, at least. Basically, they turned their hotel room upside down looking for it because she was embarrassed having lost it. Her husband bought her a new one before they came back. And that's the one she's been wearing since they got married, basically, because she thought she lost her original one. I don't think you're wrong on this track, because I tell you what she did with the wedding ring once she found it, it's also weird.
Sure.
So, having heard all of this about the wedding ring, she does get sick again, just like she did at the carnival, so maybe it wasn't a bad carnival dog. She goes home, and she's thinking of Johnny, like, the entire fucking time. She does go up to her attic, pulls out the suitcase, finds the ring, though the first time she looked, she didn't find anything, because she didn't really look all that hard, she didn't want to. But she, tells herself, you didn't really want to find anything, did you? So she goes back, looks again, finds it. And during all of this, she's also, after she has the ring, she has to go pick up her kid from the sitter and then start prepping because her husband is bringing a partner from his law firm home for dinner. So they're having a fancy dinner. So she's got to start prepping, the food and do some house cleaning. And after she cleans the toilet, she throws the ring in the toilet and flushes it.
So her husband won't find out that it's been found?
I guess, yeah, that's kind of how it's described. She's like, it's thought to be lost, now it's lost again, basically. But, yeah, she's still thinking of Johnny and that D she never got. And we end the section knowing that the dinner was a success.
That's strange.
Right?
Like, hawk the ring. Get money for the ring.
Well, it's got, inscribed their names and shit.
Oh.
The dude had it inscribed.
Really fancy.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
So maybe she was afraid of that. I don't know. Pennywise can find it. He can find it and pretend that they're engaged. I don't know. So that was the Dead Zone.
Just Pennywise just looking the ring.
I mean, why not? find all kinds of stuff in the sewer, and I imagine a lot of it's not fun. They did have quite the little hoard in the, like, in the 2017 movie.
Yeah.
Of, like, stuff that they clearly had, like, scavenged to make a nest.
Yeah, I know, but now all I can hear is the Lord of the Rings movie. And, Bilbo being like, after all, why shouldn't I?
Yeah. You know what?
So.
Yeah. That's the image I like.
Oh, Pennywise as Bilbo?
So Vera. This bitch. I hate this bitch. I hate this bitch so much. Her son is in a coma. Herb says that they are going to be using their savings. Like I said, it's not free to house and support someone in a coma. So he works as a contractor, or at least something of that nature. They have savings. This is how they're going to support both themselves and their child that's in a coma. And she is spending money on any stupid ass thing. She ends up, like, going to a farm waiting for a spaceship to take her and her other, like, members to heaven. Like, she has fallen for all the scams, and at one point, she even tries to sell their house. Herb only finds out because the realtor had called, trying to arrange a showing. And he basically tells her, like, look, you have to fucking stop. You know what you were doing was not okay. And her ass crawls on the cross herself. And it's disgusting. Like, this is how you're taking the money that is supporting the kid that you're freaking out about and is like, no, God has a plan for him. And trying to just spend it on getting yourself into heaven constantly. And it's just, oh God, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to read.
Mentally very unwell,
yes.
It sounds like.
Oh God, yes. That's why they want her on medication, and Herb keeps going, like, I haven't committed her yet, basically.
Yeah.
But he's looking at committing her potentially if it just keeps being this way.
Yeah.
And he probably should have. I imagine he doesn't want to be alone.
It's not an easy decision to make.
No.
But, yeah, that makes sense.
But there is also, like, this one moment where it's before Johnny wakes up, and they're just having a particularly... It may have even been with when he was calling her out about trying to sell the house behind his back, where he says, you know, because she's actually there for a moment, you know, she's not kind of distant and who knows where, but he's like holding her hand, and he says, you know, even if Johnny never wakes up, at least we still have each other, right? And that sets her off into, don't say that he's never going to wake up. God has a plan for him. I know. Because she knows. And even when Johnny is, like, when he's back awake, Herb tells her before they go, like, hey, look, I know God has a plan for Johnny, and your prayers were answered and mine were not, because his were obviously for his kid to just go and be done. Hers were that Johnny would wake up. So he's like, I don't know what did it, but yours were answered, mine were not. But while he is kind of adjusting to being back in the world, you need to not put all of this on him.
Yeah.
She absolutely refused. Nope. She knows she has to tell and educate Johnny in what his role in life is going to be. Whatever God has planned for him. Because somehow she's chatted with God. But regardless, it is really rough to fucking read her sections and everything about this woman. Because yes, she is mentally unwell, but it's hard.
If she's not willing to do anything about it.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's like, I think that's why Stephen King was trying to point out that Herb does not strike her. Because he does think about it after he breaks his leg with the cane, when she is going off on one of her things about why she needs to spend all of this money on whatever next thing that's going to save them. Like, when he broke his leg, she insisted that he, like, put something on his cast that was blessed by some televangelist.
I think it says a lot about... I think it's meant to say a lot about her, then. Because, like, when you're in that frustrating of a situation, it's not... It's the same as, like, why I wish that the kid will just pass away. So that way, you know, this could kind of be over with. It's, like, a practical viewpoint. It's not a weird thought to have, but you don't act on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like doctors ever ask them, like, hey, he's probably not going to wake up. Do you want to pull the plug or anything? That might be different. Just having that, like, that's not a weird thought to have had. Looking at her, she's putting him in this position again and being like, God, I want to hit you, but I'm not gonna.
No, it's true, because reading it, I wanted to smack this bitch. She's like, please stop. Please stop everything you're doing. You're terrible.
I feel like this is a pattern that we see with Stephen King books a lot, is you have a bad guy who is almost comically bad, who there are no redeemable qualities, and then you have the bad guy who you feel bad for.
Yeah.
But they're also doing shit that's making everything harder on the, like, quote-unquote good guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I do think that is the situation, because unlike Stilson, who, again, you see him, like, killing a dog as his, like, intro to the story. I have no sympathy for Stilson. Obviously, he's not well either, but...
Yeah.
That man killed a dog. As I said here, next to 2 dogs.
Yeah.
No sympathy for Stilson.
No.
He doesn't deserve it.
He's also mentally very unwell.
Yeah.
Because someone who is mentally well doesn't just do that.
No, they don't. And they don't hang out with Nazis.
Or be a Nazi.
Yeah.
Which, if you hang out with Nazis...
You're a Nazi.
You're a Nazi.
Like, sorry, not sorry. You're a fucking Nazi if you're hanging out with Nazis.
I keep seeing this term Nazi sympathizer. There is no such thing. There's Nazis and there's not Nazis.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Nazi bar thing. Like, yeah, you're a Nazi. That's just simple as that. And fuck you. Anywho, I will say, like, so, like, Vera made me think of, there is an episode of My Name is Earl, which, obviously, I just rewatched a bunch of My Name is Earl.
Yeah.
And it's an episode I don't generally watch because it also upsets me in a really similar way. And it's the Christmas episode of the first season. Because Joy's mother, she's in a wheelchair when you first see her, and what you end up finding out throughout the episode is that she doesn't actually need it. And she's not actually getting, like, dialysis treatments. She's got a gambling problem. And so she takes the dialysis money, she goes and hits up whatever casino, racetrack, whatever thing is near her. And she had broken her ankle or something a few months prior, and she just had liked being carted around. So that's why she kept the wheelchair. So every time she gets caught by Earl doing things outside of that, her response is, "Don't you judge me." And, like, the delivery is amazing, because, like, it's the woman who played Grace from Grace Under Fire.
Oh, shit.
Like, she's a great actress.
Yeah.
And so she's delivering this really well, but it is infuriating, especially when you get to the last time, well, one of the last times she says it, is when she's stealing the car that Earl has gone through the trouble of getting to make up to Joy for giving her so many bad Christmases. And, like, Randy was excited to, like, give... Like, it was Randy's gift to Earl for Earl to give to Joy. Like, there's a whole thing around it. And she's stealing the car, and she's saying it as she's, like, driving off in the car because she's got to go to the casino. And then she loses the car at the casino, and as she's walking back, because Earl had to catch up to her on a bike, he's like, "Where's the car?" And she says it's at the casino, and she tells him she basically lost it betting, and once again says, "Don't you judge me." And it's just, that is the Vera vibes.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. That's why I don't watch that episode very much, despite the fact that it does have quality performances in it.
Yeah, no, that's fair, because it's like, I don't have to be casting judgment to look at you and be like, no, what you did hurt me, what you did hurt your kid, what you did hurt a bunch of people around you, and you need help.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a judgment, that's just, this is the situation.
Yeah, you are harming people.
Yeah. Because if it was only harming her...
Yeah, sucks for her.
That is her business.
Yes, that is her business. In this book, Johnny has second sight. They believe that the reason he survived the car collision was because of his head trauma as a kid. I don't really understand that, but that is the logic behind it, is that because he
couldn't kill that part of his brain twice. It was already dead.
Yeah, but obviously, like, his parents were never made aware of the ice skating incident, and he doesn't remember it because he blacked out. So, he doesn't actually know. None of them actually know. They just assume you must have experienced head trauma when you were a child. Or at least at some point before. So, his second sight is obviously born from this... Possibly? I don't know, because the thing is that the reason he was able to do well on the Wheel of Fortune is because he was already having, like, shine moments. Unless we say that it goes back even to that head trauma from being a child, if that triggered it, because we don't know a ton about Johnny prior to that moment on the ice. We don't know if he's, like, good at finding things yet. It's not quite the same as a shine as we know it, because most of the people that we've talked about who have shines, they don't all have head trauma. Some of them do, but not all of them. So I don't know if it's actually the same thing as a shine.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to classify it as the same thing as a shine. The interesting thing about it is that when he's doing it, so like somebody touches him and that triggers him to have these flashes and tell them stuff. He does not seem to be aware of what he has said at first. He goes, oh, I'm sorry, did I say something that upset you, or what did I say? Like, he seems like he does not quite register what words came out of his mouth. But then, as a little bit more time passes, he seems to start interacting with it in a way that maybe he understands it, or whatever the hell is tuning in is what's responding in that moment. Sort of like if we talked about, like, Tony being a separate entity from, like, Danny, and Tony takes over and starts talking. I don't know if that's the case. This is purely speculation. It was just kind of strange.
No, but I think since we've already seen Tony and Danny, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Like, and I was wondering it as well, because the fact that the killer chapters are anonymous the way that they are, I think right now you're supposed to be... Obviously, you're getting led down a path to assume that it's Stilson at this point, but I wonder if there is supposed to be a little bit of in the air, like, is it this John guy? Is it Stilson? Is it another person? Who is this right now? And if there's evidence that John maybe doesn't always know what he's doing, maybe there's something there. I doubt that's where we're headed, but, you know, maybe...
Well, and you know what? That's another question of, like...
Is it Sarah's husband?
I didn't know if the husband was in it enough to...
He's not. He's only in it basically mentioned by name.
Okay.
But, I don't know. It's weird, because honestly, after she left the hospital, I kind of had hoped I wouldn't have to follow Sarah's story anymore. But, you know, it is traditional Stephen King storytelling. Some dude... a plot device woman.
Yeah, we'll have to follow Sarah till she dies.
I know.
I'm sure.
But she will probably die in this book, knowing how Stephen King does things.
Well, her name is Sarah, Susan, or Sasha, so her name tells us she will probably die.
Yeah, probability is really in our favor, but either way, yeah, I don't know, because her husband isn't only... Yeah, he's only mentioned in, like, name, and it's just very unclear. Because, like, the killer chapter, if you didn't read it and you're, like, considering it, please be aware that is where some of the graphic murder and sexual assaults occur. You see this dude basically, like, sitting on a bench and he's waiting. He's waiting for this woman, basically, to come out. And it's a waitress that he had dated at one point. And he's luring her into a space so he can kill her. Like, that is exactly what he does. He lures her... by saying, oh, hey, I want to show you something, basically. She follows him going like, okay, because she knows this man. He just shows her something stupid in, like, a corner. She thinks he's being a like, annoying pain in the ass, goes to leave, and that's when he kind of just like, yeah, no, that wasn't actually the reason I brought you here. We don't know anything other than that he is a young man who dated. There's updates, because obviously we have a 4.5 year span that occurs in this.
Yeah.
Where at one point they actually had thought he had stopped because they hadn't seen anything for like 2 years, but then a new victim had popped up. And yeah, Johnny also had to get the update about Watergate and learn that Ford was now president.
God, I can't even imagine.
So I will say that this book, it reads fast, but it's a bit excruciating. It's kind of boring. It's well written, but honestly, all of Stephen King's stuff is in the beginning. It's when, he had the passion before it started to fall apart. Like I said, we've got a tragic hero, a plot device damsel, and a religious zealot, a killer, and a politician. It is a formula for Kingisms.
Especially 1990, 1995. Yeah. They all seem to have this the same
setup every time. And I have heard this is his favorite that he's written. But I don't know if that's changed now, because that was from a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he's really into Holly now and writing crime thrillers, which I think is why he likes this. Because it was basically a crime thriller with some supernatural elements tossed in.
Which is a shame, because I feel like I'd really like that.
We might really enjoy his later stuff. You might. Where he is just doing crime thrillers. It's not really horror, but truthfully, so much of his stuff never really was horror. It was just fucked up. It was disturbing. Yeah, that's all I have to say about this book. I think that this is a solid book to close out the first Dark Tower book.
Yeah.
I do feel like we're getting to a good place to finally finish The Gunslinger.
Oh, man.
To anybody who does not already know, we are postponing The Stand.
Because if we don't, we'll never finish one of the books.
Yeah.
But also, I have made impassioned pleas that I feel like The Stand will be better understood with a little more under our belt as far as the actual Dark Tower books.
And according to a lot of Redditors, it really fits well before book 3. Either way, The Stand is not happening until later. We're gonna finish up the Dead Zone and finally finish the Gunslinger. And then we'll start the drawing of the 3, and we will see what all ends up queued up in that lineup. But,
man.
I don't know that anything will be. Because from the first half of what I remember, I don't recall there being a ton of things that made me think of the other books.
I have no idea.
He has so many fucking books.
I know.
But
we've barely scratched the surface.
I know. It's crazy. So, either way, I think this is a solid out for The Gunslinger. It's interesting, especially knowing that he wrote this during, or at least not too far after, The Stand.
Yeah.
Last time, we drew the same card we drew in our very first episode, which was the Ace of Cups.
Was it really the first episode?
It was the first episode, and I think we drew it at another point too, but for sure at the first episode we drew the Ace of Cups, and that signified a fresh start, which is fitting given that Johnny's coma is forcing him into one.
Yeah, that's fair.
What did we get this time?
This time we got the 3 of Pentacles. Ooh. Or coins, depending on how you read your cards. On this card, there's 3 people. 2 are looking up at another guy. It looks like a guy standing on a bench underneath arches, which there's also 3 arches. At the top of the archway is a carving of the 3 pentacles. This is a very detailed card, and this is a basic Rider-Waite deck. So if you want more details on this card, look it up, because I can't actually describe this card well. It's very detailed, which is surprising, because it's not...
Because it's a minor?
Yeah, it's a minor
okay, but card. Would you like me to ruin this card for you?
Yeah, I guess.
When you were talking about the dude on the bench, and given the look of him, all I could think of was Stuart.
Look what I could do. Yes. That's exactly... Yeah, it's those vibes. It's absolutely those vibes.
If you don't know who Stuart is, you are too young for this podcast.
Or, go look. Go find out. And if you're too young to find out, you are too young for this podcast.
So the 3 symbolizes successful teamwork. A group of different people has come together to achieve an early success. I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Is that what this is supposed to be?
They're not all just looking at what Stuart can do.
They look really skeptical. Look at them.
Yeah, they do.
Maybe it's just me.
Well, and he's got a cup that he's pouring out.
Yeah, it almost looks like, I was gonna say it looks like a jester and a monk and a lady in a polka dotted veil, which is, I don't get that, but and that they're looking up at the jester who's pulling a Stuart, which makes sense to me for a jester, and I think the lady is holding a scroll.
It's a scroll or it's some sort of cloth, but I think it's a scroll because it's got such detail on it.
Maybe he's meant to be a artisan. Maybe he's carving the archway and she's holding the plans for it.
Oh, maybe. I don't think it's all coming together in this card.
No, it doesn't look like it to me.
Group projects are shitty.
Yeah.
So this is the typical look of a group project to me. You got the guy who's not paying attention. You've got the guy who's doing all the work. Or at least thinks he is. He's the idea guy. And then you've got the possible woman who is doing all the work.
Yeah.
With the plans in her hand going, why are you not listening to me?
This is what the instructions say.
We're gonna get an F, guys.
We were so distracted by the 3 of Pentacles that we totally forgot to say what we were reading next. We're going to be reading chapter 10 through chapter 16. So basically, we're finishing up part 1.
Okay, well, the people know what to do. They know what worlds are out there at this point. They know that I'm going to tell them to go and find them. I always know that we're recording and I never think of something before.
Hey, you were the one who decided you needed to do it different every time.
I know. Do you know how boring it would be if I did it the same every time?
Go find a world where Taryn said it the same way each time. Hey lobsters, if you just can't get enough of us or want to see the shenanigans of Minnie and Connie the Mini Constant Lobsters, you can follow us on Blue Sky or check out our Patreon. On Patreon, you can follow us for free and get access to all of our movie watch-throughs, in case you really wanted to know what it was like to have us in the room with you, really wishing we'd be quiet so you could watch the damn movie. Okay, bye.